I'm really shocked at the number of people here given a football game on tonight, but I'm happy to announce the opening of the first session of the Dunleavy Geological Society. Look out here. But you've all come to see my art, and that's a great thing. I've got a list of things so I don't screw up like I did last time. Can people read what's number one on this list?
Oh, no. Yes, Lisa.
And my first opening, I seem to have neglected the fact that that I have a wife, and then she actually got me started on all of this. So I wouldn't be doing any of this if it wasn't for a gift she gave me back in Hanukkah of 2007, when I'm impossible to shop for. I don't want anything, I don't need anything. You can see I certainly don't dress like I ever go shopping. She bought me Photoshop, and it changed my life. And so I started doing things, and that meant I needed to buy a printer, and then things started piling up, and so she said, you need to start removing some of this stuff from the house. So it went to going to shows, and after a couple of years, it went to trying to get into this place. To get into Archway Gallery, it takes some work. You have to get voted in by 3/4 of the members, and it took me 3 times before I hit that threshold, because the other people who came in ahead of me are phenomenal. And so that's the second part of this thing, is a lot of you have only been here a couple of times for my shows. You need to come here more often. This is an incredible community. 31 artists. I'm incredibly pleased. This is the kickoff of the 40th year of Archway Gallery. And that's an incredible feat when you think of an art cooperative. I mean, we're all a bunch of narcissists, right? How do you get 2 of us to agree on anything? But this has been a population of people that are just great together and individually. I mean, it's the most eclectic gallery you'll ever run across. Every 10 feet it changes entirely. But it's spectacular work by spectacular people. They're great artists and they're really great people, which leads me to my next point. My first show was basically an agglomeration of mountain images that I had taken, since I was a kid, because I'm a geologist and I love the mountains. But artistically, I mean, some of them were good. I mean, I do love some of those images. But they were being in the right place, more than a lot of thought going, I need to go here to do this. I learned that from the people here. What's your point? Are you just taking pretty pictures, or what are you doing? I've grown a hell of a lot since I became a member in November of 2011, so it's been 4 years. And I've learned an amazing amount from this community. I've grown. Well, actually, you guys will be the judges of whether there's been any growth or not, so I'll leave that up to you. But it's been a phenomenal experience, and it's taught me a lot about art and what art is and isn't, and what it takes to be good at it, your craft, and to put yourself into it instead of just capturing things. And so, this is a great community that you should all know and support, but it's more important than that in the 40th. It's also a real part of the artistic community of Houston in a way that most people don't realize. We do charity events at this thing. We host competitions for other artists and show their work in July. Students come in with an idea and they need a space to show their work. High school students. And my heart soars like, well, with those of that my training know what it soars like what? An eagle, exactly. Whenever I then hear that we're allowing these people to come in and do this stuff. It's phenomenal, and City of Houston comes March, they better be supporting this place, because 40 years is pretty impressive. I think it's probably the 5th location, maybe something like that. Okay, preamble over. So where did this begin? The last image from my show last time was called Finding Equilibrium, and it was sort of a bunch of just profiles, topographic profiles from mountains to canyons to basically this flat green line, which was the photograph part. It was just a bunch of, Spartina patens, seagrass, marsh grass along the coast. And it got me thinking. I grew up next to a creek, Minnehaha Creek in Minneapolis, and I always used to love just hiking up creeks to find their sources. I did it as a kid. I did it when we moved to New York, finding these springs. Then I went off to Amherst College, and it was not an easy beginning for me. But a group of friends showed me a spot, and it's where I became me. It's a place called Chapel Ledge up in the Berkshire Mountains, and it's actually this place here and that there. Over from where you're facing, over your left-hand shoulder, if you look back and up to the left, is this big granodiorite knob that I learned to rock climb on. And then we'd come down after climbing, and we'd hop into this. The spring is around a quarter mile upstream from here. The water is 55 degrees, but it was stunningly beautiful spot. And it's a place where I would go. Water, titled this thing, Finding Equilibrium. It's what water does, and when I'm in places like that, it's where I find my equilibrium. Since that time, whenever I'm within around 150 miles, that seems to be about the radius of this spot, I go and make time and get back to Chapel Ledge. Mark Hempton isn't here tonight because he's still up in New Hampshire. His daughter got married in Boston over the summer. I sent Lisa packing. She had to get back to work to Houston. I took off for Chapel Ledge and spent a day and a half just hanging out at this spot again. So it goes from there. One of the people who introduced me to this is a well-known sculptor up in Seattle who was a roommate of mine. And oddly enough, around 40 years after that, he introduced me to this spot. He's a fly fisherman, and it's something that people can be incredibly nuts about, and he's one of them. And so he had me go and said, "Why don't you come out and visit us while we're fishing?" And so I did. It's eastern Idaho, a place called the Island Park Caldera. And this image is actually 10 feet out the door of the cabin we were staying in at sunrise. Spectacular place. They would go fishing. I'm not big on fishing. That ridge is the edge of, once again for the geologists in the crowd, it's the edge of the Island Park Caldera, which is the previous big volcano to Yellowstone. The spring, these images, that whole wall behind everyone, the wall to the right, those are largely images of this place called Big Spring. And it's just spectacular. I've spent a number of days over 3 trips just to photograph this place. I've always loved photographing water, and there's something special about it. And it's where photography really comes into itself as an art form. You can't, unless you freeze that motion, you can't see the patterns. The only way you can see them is with the shutter. And you can change the focus and how you deal with things, but it's how you freeze that motion. And when I'm looking at a body of water, for some reason I'm able to sort of freeze that motion in my head and go, wow, I need to take some pictures of this. And that's what I've done here. So a bunch of them are this spring in Idaho. There's a spring from a 4-day jaunt up to North Dakota just to do it. But we captured a spring in the Black Hills, that ribbons in blue on the back wall. And then I tortured Lisa in France by spending an excessive amount of time photographing a couple of springs there as well, which is on the metal pieces underneath my name over there from southern France. So, that's basically it. I found these places are the most pristine, clean water I've found anywhere. And the colors, so one of the questions you might have, if I messed with the colors, only on one image. It's on that wall there called In a Hurry. I rotated the color bar a little bit. The rest of these are as they are. And there are a couple of tells in the photograph that'll prove it on a couple of the photographs if you don't believe me. One over the jewelry case over there, and one on the back wall on the left-hand side. You'll be able to see that, no, these colors are actually there. The deep blues and purples are the holes where the water is coming up, upwelling, these deep holes where the water is coming up. And the patterns, because it's not just rippling water flowing downstream. You've got this interface of water coming up Those aren't raindrops, those are bubbles on those other images. It's you know, a spectacular place, which actually leads me to the end, and I know I've been talking too long. The last two images, so you go from this exhibit in my mind has a heart and a soul. The heart is, you know, the beauty of these scenes. And finding equilibrium, I started thinking about the fact that I'm a little worried that we're beginning to lose equilibrium. So the last two images are at the door, and they're these photo merges, and you'll see, so those are, actually I should change the labels. Those are what in the art world is called mixed media. So in those it's photography and Excel, Microsoft Excel, because I put some charts on those. And on the upper one, it's Arizona population growth in red, and the water volume in Lake Mead in blue. And you can see that those are crossing in an incredibly sustainable way. And the image below that is Houston. And take a look at that population growth chart. That's from 1900 to present. And that should scare us. It should scare us all. And that's where my Finding Equilibrium picture was last time, and it became this whole show. So I'm sort of scared that my next show is going to be a bit depressing. And that's it. Anyone have any questions?
But we'll still come.
Good. Better. Because that'll be the second meeting of the Dunleavy Geological Society.
Well, you didn't alter the colors, but you got that gift of Photoshop. Were you able to put that?
Oh, I definitely use my Photoshop, but all I did on these is I upped the saturation a little bit. I used one filter, but at a very fine level, so that it's hard to tell that it's actually been filtered. I do that so I can expand these images to large sizes and not have them look pixely. But that's all I did with those. The other ones I did my usual thing where I really used the dry brush filter and the smudge brush over the entire image. These I hardly touched.
Can you explain what that is to someone who doesn't do photography or do the Photoshop thing? Like, what's like a smudge brush?
Oh, it's just these tools in Photoshop. Smudge brush just is what it sounds like. It's like you're smudging small pieces of the image. And you have a paintbrush basically, and you digitally smudge everywhere. But on these water ones, didn't bother. No need. Have at it. There's probably a ton more food, and if there isn't, Lisa will kill me.